Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey with a shiver running down your spine. You're standing on a quiet mountain pass, surrounded by the distant clang of bells and a fog so thick it tastes like wet stone. The torch in your hand flickers wildly, not from the wind, but from something colder, stranger. Behind you, an imperial messenger pants through the mist, clutching a scroll marked urgent. You open it. The words are few, but bone-deep chilling. Enemy approaching. No survivors. No bodies. No sound. You've never seen your emperor this shaken. He summons you to his war room by moonlight, pacing like a man hunted by shadows. No enemy banners, no swords drawn, just tales of whispering winds and footprints that vanish. You might think this is a prank, but the look in his eyes says otherwise. You probably won't survive this one, especially if it turns out the enemy is real and already here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's fun to see where you all are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You mount your horse, summoned by imperial decree to investigate what locals call the Fog of Souls. Fields once golden with wheat now ripple with frost in summer. Farmers whisper about ghosts in broad daylight, shadows that don't match their owners, tools that move on their own, and a strange tolling bell that no one can find. Historians still argue whether this fog was a meteorological anomaly, a freak weather pattern, or something far older. You reach a ridge and scan the horizon. Empty. But your horse refuses to move forward, its breath steaming fast and shallow. That's when you see it, a single boot pressed into the mud, slowly filling with ice. No one around. Just that one print. Then another appears. And another. Marching in a straight line toward your capital. Back at the palace, the emperor doesn't hesitate. This is not the work of men, he declares. Mobilize the legions. His generals exchange glances, but none dare speak. You can practically smell the incense already. They're going to try both steel and superstition. The funny part? This isn't even the weirdest warrior emperor's ever declared. Remember when he tried to arrest a comet? But this is different. This time, people are genuinely terrified. Not of the emperor's madness, but of the possibility that he's right. You spend the night in the royal barracks. The walls groan. Someone swears they saw a disembodied hand crawl under their bed. You don't sleep. You just wait for the morning fog, and whatever walks inside it. You're summoned before sunrise. The emperor stands draped in ceremonial armor, a blend of bronze, silk, and sheer theatrical drama. His eyes are bloodshot, not from sleeplessness, but from staring too long into a candle, hoping for visions. Behind him, courtiers scurry with scrolls, talismans, and hot tea. The war cabinet has been renamed the Circle of Twilight. Because of course it has. This morning, the emperor speaks to the assembled army, not about tactics or supply chains, but about destiny. We are chosen, he proclaims, to end the reign of the unseen. A hawk circles overhead. A sign? A coincidence? Or maybe just a bored bird? Depends on who you ask. You spot General Mudo at the edge of the crowd. He's been through 5 campaigns, 1 mutiny, and that unfortunate incident with the tiger priest. He catches your eye and mutters, "Last time someone claimed to fight ghosts, we ended up chasing smoke for 2 months." You nod. You were there. You still have that rash. Still, orders are orders. And the emperor is not a man to be challenged, not since the librarian who corrected his grammar mysteriously retired to the sea. He's got something to prove, this emperor. A middle son turned surprise heir, constantly overshadowed by his war hero brothers. History books barely mention him, at least, not favorably. So when the opportunity came to make his mark, he didn't hesitate. Even if it meant marching his empire into legend, or lunacy. Historians still debate whether his motivations were genuine fear or carefully orchestrated theater. Some suspect he invented the ghost army to justify crackdowns and raise taxes. Others argue he truly believed he was under attack, from another realm. Either way, he rides out with the first wave. Yes, the emperor himself. Cloak billowing, banners snapping, and a personal drummer whose rhythm is just a bit off. You follow behind, hooves crunching across frostbitten grass. There's no resistance. No enemy fire. Just that same eerie fog, hugging the earth like a possessive lover. At the edge of a wooded glade, the troops stop. There, lying across the path, is a sword. Just one. Polished. New. Still warm to the touch. No owner in sight. Enemy offering, the Emperor whispers. A challenge. He draws his blade and slashes the air in an elaborate salute. Then he stabs the empty fog. Silence. Then, a gust of wind. Trees shiver. Somewhere, a crow cackles like it's in on the joke. You sleep that night on edge, under a canopy of stars that flicker like they're winking at you. One soldier ties garlic around his ankles. Another murmurs to a pebble he calls Captain Pebbles. You don't judge. Not tonight. Before dawn, the scouts return, wide-eyed and trembling. They saw a formation of shadowy figures on a nearby ridge. Tall. Silent. No armor clink. No faces. Just shapes, standing still as tombstones. When the Emperor hears this, he smiles. For the first time in weeks, he looks alive. They're real, he whispers. This will be my masterpiece. You're starting to wonder if you're in the middle of history, or a ghost story that forgot to end. You ride out with the forward scouts to verify the sightings. The sun is just beginning to rise, though it's more of a suggestion than an event, thin, pale light filtering through fog like weak tea through a dirty cloth. The grass beneath your boots crunches with frost, although the calendar insists it's midsummer. You're beginning to think the weather isn't playing by mortal rules anymore. The ridge is quiet. Too quiet. And you know that's a cliché, but seriously, no birds, no breeze, not even the creak of your saddle. Just the sound of your own breath and the quiet drip-drip of dew melting from leaves that somehow smell like incense. Then you see it. Or rather, don't see it. Dozens of indentations in the earth, boot-shaped, but impossibly shallow. They form rows. Marching formation. No drag marks, no scuffs. Just clean, perfect impressions, like someone pressed ghost feet into dough and then vanished. One of the younger scouts starts muttering a prayer to the god of unprovable nonsense. You pat his shoulder. It's just wind, you lie, because someone has to. But your skin is crawling like it's trying to evacuate your body. You return to camp with sketches, measurements, and several uneaten hard biscuits because no one could swallow. The Emperor reviews the findings and nods with maddening calm. It's just as the prophecy described, he says. Wait, what prophecy? Turns out, buried in the Imperial Library, right behind the books on celery farming and scandalous poetry, there's a scroll called the Cloud Host Chronicle. It describes a phantom army that appears once every 4 generations, summoned by unrest in the living realm. The last time it came, according to the scroll, the Empire fell. Neat. Historians still argue whether this scroll was authentic, or hastily forged by the Emperor's cousin who once ran a haunted puppet theater. Regardless, it now serves as divine justification for a full military campaign. So, the Emperor draws up plans. Maps are inked, flags assigned, units named. You're now part of the 3rd Echo Division, specializing in ambushes, morale boosting, and counter-spectral engagement. Whatever that means. Your new standard? A silver banner with a frowning mask and crossed incense sticks. Stylish. One major problem remains. The battlefield doesn't exist. That's not metaphor. The area marked for deployment, the plain of hollow steps, shows up on no map. No villagers remember it. No records mention it. But the Emperor swears it's there. You march anyway. The landscape shifts unnaturally as you travel. Rocks rearrange themselves overnight. Rivers disappear and reappear 20 feet away. And one tree near the camp refuses to cast a shadow unless you're looking at it sideways. Still, forward you go. Eventually, you arrive. Or think you do. It's a flat expanse with no birds, no bugs, and no breeze. The soil smells faintly of iron. Your horse refuses to step past a particular line in the dirt. That's when the drummer starts his beat. Slow. Solemn. Like a heartbeat after a bad decision. The Emperor stands before the troops and raises his sword to the fog. We see you, he cries. And we do not yield. The fog answers with silence. And somehow, that's worse. The fog hangs thick and heavy like wet velvet as the Emperor orders the war drums to beat louder. You're not sure if it's to intimidate the ghosts or to drown out the rising panic. Either way, the rhythm pounds through your chest like an unwelcome second heartbeat. Soldiers around you shuffle nervously, eyes darting at shadows that don't match their owners. You try to keep a level head. Maybe it's all mass hysteria, a shared illusion sparked by strange winds and stranger leaders. But then you hear it, a sound layered beneath the drums. A whisper. Too faint to make out words, but definitely there. The kind of whisper that curls around your ears and asks questions your soul isn't ready to answer. The Emperor nods. They speak. They challenge. You're not so sure. It sounded more like someone boiling tea very quietly in the void. And yet, his response is decisive. Advance the lines. So you do. Rows of soldiers creep forward, swords drawn, eyes wide. Not a single arrow is fired. Not a single enemy seen. And still, the Emperor acts like he's in the middle of a siege. He calls for catapults, archers, flamethrowers. Not that you have any, but the attempt is noted. The army launches volley after volley into the mist. Nothing returns. Then someone screams. You wheel around, blade drawn. A soldier, young, barely older than a page, is pointing into the fog. It touched me, he shrieks, clutching his arm. There's no wound, no mark, just terror so raw it crackles off his skin. You pull him aside, try to calm him down, but his eyes have gone glassy. Later, when the Emperor hears of it, he nods solemnly. The first casualty, he declares. He orders a monument built on the spot. A rock with a single carved word, breach. That night, the fog glows faintly. Pale blue pulses drift through the camp like lazy fireflies. The soldiers call them ghost lanterns. You'd call them hallucinations, but one of them passes through a tent wall and makes the fabric ripple like water. Historians still argue whether this was a natural gas phenomenon, some rare luminous swamp vapor, or a mass projection of fear-induced hysteria. You argue that you just want your tent to stop whispering your name at night. The Emperor is unshaken. He declares the whispers are part of this spiritual war front, and he begins naming invisible enemies. General Hollowtooth, he says. Captain Ironsoul. Lady Wayne. No one knows where he's getting these names, but they start appearing in dispatches and roll calls. In the command tent, maps are redrawn. Strategic markers are placed on nothing. Orders are given to flank shadows. One officer is promoted for successfully routing a patch of mist. And just when you think things can't get more surreal, the Emperor promotes a corpse. Yes, a soldier who died 3 months earlier, clearly, visibly, audibly dead, is posthumously reactivated as a commander of spectral resistance. His helmet is placed on a pole, given a seat at strategy meetings, and consulted via coin flips. You'd laugh if it weren't also exhaustingly real. By the 4th day, the men stop asking questions. They march. They camp. They stab at the air when commanded. One night, a drummer accidentally plays the opening beat to a wedding song and is immediately reassigned to latrine duty for causing metaphysical confusion. You lie in your tent, eyes open, ears tuned to the wind. You think you hear footsteps again, soft, measured, dragging just slightly. But when you look outside, there's only fog and a single drum still echoing into nothing. You wake to incense. A lot of incense. Thick curls of it float through camp like lazy ghosts of their own, stinging your eyes and making you sneeze so hard your helmet shifts sideways. The Emperor has declared a day of spiritual purification. Why? Because the latest advisory from his Twilight Seers claims the Ghost Army isn't just here to conquer, it's here to infect. That's right. The fog, they claim, is sentient, malicious, contagious. So now the army's not just fighting the unseen, it's trying not to be possessed by it. This morning, you and everyone else are handed a pouch of protective herbs, a strip of goat leather to chew for spirit grounding, and a wax charm that melts instantly in your hand. It smells like fish and lies. The Emperor, meanwhile, is holding court with his newly formed spiritual war council, a circle of astrologers, necromancers, one extremely sweaty monk, and a woman who speaks only in bird metaphors. They sit in a tent surrounded by bells, candles, mirrors, and, inexplicably, a very judgmental goose. One of the rituals involves tying scrolls of old sins to arrows and firing them blindly into the fog. Another includes a synchronized chant involving 6 drums, 3 gongs, and a man yelling "I banish thee" every 12 seconds on the dot. Historians still argue whether these rituals were borrowed from ancient traditions, invented wholesale, or based on a particularly vivid dream the Emperor had after eating spoiled eel. But what matters is this: the army takes it seriously. Because something is definitely happening. That night, several soldiers wake up screaming. They all report the same dream, a battlefield where no one dies, swords pass through bodies, and a faceless figure watches from a throne made of salt. One soldier tears out his own fingernails to feel alive again. He's given a promotion. You start to feel it too, fatigue not of the body, but of the mind. Like something is tapping gently at the back of your thoughts, just waiting for you to open the door. The Emperor doubles down. They are trying to win through us, he warns. Through our memories, our sleep, our doubt. So he enacts a new policy, daily memory affirmations. Soldiers must now begin and end each day by loudly reciting their names, ranks, favorite color, and the names of their last 3 meals. It feels silly until someone forgets. A young guard hesitates at breakfast. Can't recall dinner. Stammers. Eyes glaze. And then he starts speaking in a voice not his own. Low. Wet. Like moss trying to talk. You slap him hard enough to rattle his helmet. He blinks, sobs, and vomits a live cricket. After that, no one skips the affirmations. Still, something's wrong in the camp. Birds refuse to land. Milk curdles in its skin. The cook's soup changes flavor depending on who eats it. One man swears his shadow bowed to him. Another finds his boots filled with sand every morning, though you're miles from any desert. But the Emperor? He thrives in this madness. He starts wearing a new robe, deep purple, covered in stitched eyes, each blinking slowly at different times. He claims it helps him see both realms. The goose nods solemnly. You try not to think too hard about that. You wake before dawn to the clang of iron and the thrum of panic. The alarm is sounding, 3 long drum beats and a horn blast so shrill it makes your bones buzz. You grab your sword, stumble into your boots, and charge out into the fog-drenched chaos. The Emperor has declared an attack. On what? No one's sure. But according to the latest divination reading, the enemy's main host has been spotted near the Eastern Grove, a stretch of forest you passed 2 days ago that definitely didn't exist before then. You mount up and ride out with your unit, the 3rd Echo Division, now proudly equipped with incense grenades and bronze mirrors for spectral deflection. The horses are skittish. One refuses to move. Another bucks its rider into a shrub that promptly bursts into flame. You reach the grove, and it's silent. Not peaceful silent. More like the silence of a room that just stopped breathing. The Emperor orders the siege lines drawn. Tents go up. Archers perch in trees. And, in the middle of an empty field, engineers begin constructing catapults, because nothing says serious war like flinging large rocks into absolutely nothing. You watch as the first volley is fired. The rock soars through the fog and disappears without a sound. A moment later, a breeze kicks up and whispers what sounds eerily like mist. The Emperor claps, delighted. They taunt us! They are aware! Historians still argue whether this was clever psychological warfare, atmospheric distortion, or the Emperor making up ghost trash talk to keep morale up. Whatever the reason, it works. Sort of. The soldiers begin to believe they're actually engaging something. Shouts erupt. I saw movement. That tree blinked. My shoe is haunted. Spears are hurled, arrows loosed, swords slash through mist as if every wisp holds a demon. You, for your part, slash at a particularly menacing bush. Then, the bruises begin. At first, it's just 1 or 2 men reporting strange marks on their skin, cold to the touch, shaped like fingerprints. Then more. Then dozens. Arms, backs, necks. Bruises appearing where no blade touched, no fist struck. Men swear they were grabbed, thrown, shaken, by nothing. A medic tries to rationalize it, perhaps sleepwalking injuries, stress spasms. Then a bruised soldier pulls open his tunic to reveal a perfect handprint. 6 fingers. Too long. Too thin. That night, the Emperor orders additional spiritual defenses, salt circles around every tent, bells tied to every spear, and a mandatory bedtime chant. I am me. I am here. I do not belong to shadow. You whisper it like a prayer. You're not even sure who you're trying to convince anymore. Later, you walk past the eastern edge of camp and see a squadron standing at attention. No sound. No movement. Just silhouettes in the fog. You approach. Call out. They vanish. Poof! Like smoke retreating from a match. You run back to report it, heart hammering. The commander listens, then calmly jots it down as phantom provocation. He marks it on the map with a red pen and a small drawing of a frowning ghost. The next morning, a full regiment is missing. Tents undisturbed. Weapons left behind. No tracks. Just one word scrawled in the dirt in crooked, Shaky handwriting. Follow. The Emperor is ecstatic. They invite us forward. We must be winning. You're not sure winning is the word. You're not sure words apply anymore. The Imperial war machine is now fully engaged against what essentially amounts to fog, dreams, and missing people. And yet, the bureaucracy thrives. By midday, you find yourself seated at a folding desk under a tarp beside a scribe named Kyo, who is busy taking inventory of ghost-related engagements. Every skirmish, real or imagined, must be logged in triplicate, one for the archives, one for the Emperor's daily vision book, and one to be burned in ritual fire as an offering to the unmanifest. Kyo was exhausted. His ink-stained hands tremble, and his eyes have gone bloodshot from documenting things like 14th Infantry Regiment charged at low-hanging mist and Corporal Sinai duel to chill and loss. Behind you, a quartermaster is screaming about missing blankets. Not stolen, just gone. Like they folded themselves and floated into another dimension. And yet the paperwork continues. You're issued a new form, Ghost Interaction Acknowledgement Form 17G. It includes sections like describe the spectral event, did you feel spiritually touched, and rate your haunting on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being total ego annihilation. Meanwhile, the Emperor has renamed the payroll department Spectral Affairs, and insists that each victory be marked with both a parade and a prayer vigil. You attend one such parade. It includes exactly 2 goats, a badly tuned flute, and a soldier wearing a sheet as a symbolic prisoner of war. He is pelted with dried rice. You want to laugh. You really do. But then the rice floats. Only for a moment. Just a few grains. But enough to turn the laughter into silence. Historians still argue whether the grain levitation was real, a gust of wind, or a cleverly timed hallucination shared by several dozen people and one goat. Regardless, the Emperor adds a line to the official battle doctrine, offer rice to confuse enemy spirits, preferably uncooked. The next day, a new decree arrives from the capital. All surviving officers must submit daily emotional updates, rated by mood and potential corruption by extraplanar influences. You quickly learn that answering mildly haunted but coping earns fewer side eyes than unbothered and unburned. To manage it all, the Emperor appoints a minister of spectral logistics, an elderly noblewoman named Lady Taka who walks with a limp and claims to have once arm-wrestled a banshee. She institutes ghost-free zones within the camp, which are delineated by bamboo poles dipped in vinegar and optimism. She also introduces ration packs for ghosts. You read that right. Carefully prepared plates of rice, honey, and raw duck liver are left out nightly on carved trays bearing messages like eat this, not us. Strangely, some of the trays are empty by morning. That might be raccoons. Might be something else. But by now, you're so used to weird that you simply update the nightly inventory with a polite, neutral note. 2 out of 7 offerings consumed. Possibly appreciated. Later, the Emperor visits your tent personally. He's smiling that wide, unnerving smile again, the one that says I've either seen God or haven't slept in 4 days. He tells you, the bureaucracy is the battlefield. Every scroll we write pushes the fog back. You nod like you understand. You don't. Still, he seems pleased. He walks off, muttering something about appointing a ghost ambassador. You make a note in your journal. We might be losing to fog, but we're doing it in triplicate. It begins with a list. A perfectly normal list, at first glance, handwritten in the Emperor's spidery script and stamped with the Imperial seal. It's titled Resource Distribution, Phase 5. You skim the contents. Grain allocations, boot repairs, salt rations, and then your eyes land on a new line. Spectre rations, 100 units. You blink. Read it again. It's not a joke. The Empire is now feeding the enemy. You march straight to the supply quartermaster, a no-nonsense woman named Hannah who once stared down a charging bull because it was interrupting her lunch. She shrugs and confirms it. Came through this morning. We've packed the food. Rice balls, fermented plums, a goat's head. Delivered at dusk. To whom, you ask? She points toward the woods. Whoever picks it up. And someone does. Every night for the past 3 nights, the Spectre rations are left on a lacquered altar. Every morning, they're gone. No footprints. No sign of animals. Just a faint scent of pine needles and wet silk in the air. The Emperor declares it a diplomatic breakthrough. They accept our offerings, he beams. We are making contact. A soldier asks if this means a peace treaty is coming. The emperor stares at him for a long time, then whispers, "Peace is the lull between hauntings." The soldier is reassigned to latrine duty for excessive optimism. You attend the next War Council meeting, where the emperor outlines his Phase 6 integration strategy. It includes a proposed ceasefire with units classified as transitional spirits, the establishment of a ghost census, and, most baffling, a draft of laws protecting spectral property rights. Historians still argue whether this was proto-constitutionalism, experimental diplomacy, or the emperor just making it up as he went along while sleep-deprived and heavily incense-poisoned. Then comes the tax decree. A real, binding imperial edict. All border villages must now pay a phantom defense levy to fund operations against the invisible existential threat. Some call it patriotic. Others call it nonsense. A few, those whose roofs have started weeping brine every full moon, just pay quietly. As for you, you're tasked with overseeing the collection and distribution of these ghost taxes. Yes, you. A trained military officer, now keeping spreadsheets on spiritual warfare funding. Your new assistant is a small, nervous man who insists that his left ear can hear dead economic patterns. You try to focus. You really do. But then something strange happens. During your third supply audit, you find that one ration pack, intended for spectral forces, has been signed. Not by any of your soldiers, but in a flowing, ancient script that no one can quite translate, yet everyone instinctively understands. It reads, "Received. We await balance." You show it to the emperor. He faints from joy. When he wakes, he commissions a statue of the phrase. It's carved into obsidian, ringed by bells, and placed at the center of the camp. A monument to interplanar cooperation. That night, the fog thins slightly. You see stars. Someone claims they heard laughter, low, dry, and echoing from nowhere. Someone else finds their boots filled with petals. You, on the other hand, wake up to discover that your belt has been tied into an impossibly intricate knot, one you can't undo, and neither can anyone else. The emperor interprets it as a sign of sacred union. You don't argue. You just go to breakfast and eat in silence, your spoon bending slightly every time you try to take a bite. You're back at the capital. Well, not by choice. A courier arrived at the front in full ceremonial armor, carrying a scroll sealed with imperial wax and an expression that screamed, "Don't shoot the messenger." The emperor has summoned you for a brief report and aura assessment. You ride hard for 3 days, sleep once, and arrive with dust in your lungs and fog still clinging to your thoughts. The city is strangely quiet. Not eerily silent like the fog zone, but too subdued. You notice shuttered windows, incense trails burning from every balcony, and people wearing charms on strings around their necks, even the dogs. A street vendor is selling talismans shaped like spoons, claiming they ward off the creeping silence. Apparently, the ghost war has leaked into the palace walls. Servants whisper about footsteps on marble that don't echo. Chambermaids report mirrors fogging from within. The imperial bathhouse had to be exorcised after water started boiling spontaneously during a singing competition. You deliver your report to the High Council, minus the bits about the judgmental goose and the rice bowls being accepted by invisible hands. They listen with wide eyes, nod solemnly, and then excuse themselves to meditate in a salt spiral. Then the whispers begin. Not gossip. Literal whispers. You're walking down a hallway when you hear your name. Twice. No one's there. A scroll on a nearby table begins to unravel by itself. You touch it. It's warm. And then the lights flicker. You return to your quarters. The doorman bows and says, "Room's been swept for spirits." Twice today. You're about to thank him when he adds, "Still lost a spoon, though." What is it with these ghosts and silverware? That night, your candle refuses to stay lit. It flickers violently, flares blue, then steadies. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, where faint outlines drift across the plaster, like shadows projected by something that isn't there. By morning, the emperor is in full regalia, ready to parade through the city with symbols of cleansing. You've seen this get-up before: 3-tiered crown, mirror-polished armor, and a necklace of preserved garlic bulbs that thud like coconuts when he walks. The procession begins with drums, bells, and an awkward chant led by 12 trembling priests. The crowd watches with equal parts awe and concern. Then the emperor pauses, raises a hand, and speaks in a voice that echoes a little too well. "We are not haunted," he declares. "We are chosen to restore balance." A breeze sweeps through the street. All the candles in the shrine district go out simultaneously. The emperor smiles wider. Historians still argue whether the capital was truly experiencing mass supernatural phenomena or merely caught up in a kind of ambient paranoia, a national haunting, so to speak. But you know something followed you back from the front. Later that evening, you pass a servant polishing a statue. He leans in, whispers to it, then nods as if it replied. You stare too long. He sees you, winks, then continues polishing with the intensity of a man in debt to a ghost. Back in your room, your teacup is upside down. You didn't leave it that way. There's a note under it. It says, balance must be restored. Soon. The handwriting is yours. But you didn't write it. By dawn, the note is gone. You wake with your fingers curled as if still holding a quill, but there's no ink on your skin. Just that creeping sensation in your spine, the kind that makes you check the corners of the room for things you already know you won't see. Still, duty calls. You're summoned to the Royal Archives, where the Emperor has ordered a full historical audit of all previously ignored ghost-related incursions. This, apparently, is his new strategy, understanding the past to defeat the present. You enter the scriptorium and are nearly knocked flat by the smell of old parchment, desperation, and an herbal blend that might be either cleansing or mildly toxic. Rows of monks in saffron robes scan ancient scrolls while muttering to themselves. One of them makes eye contact with you and whispers. They blink through time, then goes back to his notes. You're handed a stack of dusty tomes and told to find precedents of paranormal military action. You dig, and dig, and dig. That's when you find it. A single volume, bound in gray leather that flakes under your fingers. The title is long faded, but the margin is marked with a strange sigil, a broken circle pierced by a feather. Inside, an account from a scholar who lived during the reign of Emperor Kiso, over 3 centuries ago. He writes of a campaign waged in a fog-blanketed valley. Soldiers vanished. Horses went mad. A priest claimed to see an army marching between seconds. And the emperor declared victory after 3 weeks of silence. Burned all the maps. Ordered the historian exiled for asking too many questions. That historian was the very man who wrote this journal. You now hold the only known copy. At the bottom of the final page is a single line written in a different hand. You're not the first to read this. You won't be the last. You close the book. Something clicks. You begin to suspect that your emperor isn't entirely original in his ghost war tactics. He's reenacting a forgotten script, one the empire itself tried to erase. You take this to the emperor immediately. He listens with eerie calm. Of course, he says. We are trapped in a cycle. But now I will be the one to end it. You're not sure if that's inspiring or terrifying. That afternoon, a bold court historian named Rin makes the mistake of publishing a public letter titled Of Fogs and Fools, a treatise on mass hysteria in wartime. He questions the logic of engaging spirits in military protocol and compares the Emperor's fog campaign to a dance with madness, only nobody brought music. By nightfall, Rin is reassigned to a remote beet farm near the glacier shelf. His work is officially declared historically inappropriate. The beet farm has no known postal address. Historians still debate whether Rin ever returned, or if his beet harvest later produced a glowing root shaped like a screaming face. Back in the palace, things escalate. Statues of past emperors start bleeding, not in fountains or through obvious trickery, just from the corners of their eyes, as though they're deeply disappointed and slightly dramatic. You witness it yourself. A shrine guard rushes in with cloth to clean it. The blood vanishes on contact. Not fades. Not wipes. Vanishes. The emperor's response? He nods, then proclaims the statues are mourning the imbalance. He orders them all blindfolded. The next day, they're repainted, eyeless, blank, serene. No one dares look at them for too long. You start to wonder, when history repeats itself, does it do so to warn, or to reclaim? The capital smells like sandalwood and dread. The emperor's new directive comes in the form of a golden scroll delivered by a falcon, because apparently messengers aren't dramatic enough anymore. The edict calls for a sacred ritual parade to calm the spirits and bind wandering souls to the river of memory. Translation: we're doing a full-blown ghost appeasement festival, with drums, dancers, and more incense than a temple on fire. You're assigned to the parade's protective vanguard, which sounds official until you realize your job is to walk beside a donkey pulling a cart full of singing bowls. The donkey, named Koji, refuses to move unless serenaded. You hum awkward lullabies while trying not to breathe too deeply, as the air has become a soup of ash and floral overkill. The parade begins at dawn. The emperor leads it on foot, barefoot, draped in a robe stitched with hundreds of tiny copper bells. With every step, he jingles like a festive avalanche. Behind him march musicians, priests, nobles, and an awkward choir of palace scribes singing out of key. You pass through neighborhoods where people kneel in reverence or confusion. Children cry. Dogs howl. A man swears his spoon melted when the emperor passed by. At major intersections, the parade pauses for purification rites. These include ringing gongs exactly 108 times, yes, someone counts, scattering black rice into the wind, and releasing birds that immediately return and perch on the emperor's shoulder, which he declares is a sign of spectral trust. Halfway through the route, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through the crowd, spinning lanterns and extinguishing torches. Everyone freezes. Even Koji snorts nervously. The emperor closes his eyes and lifts his arms. "They are here," he says. "They are watching." Historians still argue whether the gust was a weather anomaly or orchestrated theater. Some even suggest hidden bellows operated by servants with unusually large lungs. The final stop is the Echo Gate, a ceremonial arch rarely used except for coronations and executions. Here, the emperor performs a dramatic solo dance, supposedly to mirror the movements of the veiled guardians of the spirit realm. It looks more like interpretive martial arts, but no one laughs. Not even the birds. Then the emperor pulls out a scroll, reads it aloud in an unfamiliar tongue, and burns it over a bronze bowl. The smoke rises in twisting patterns. The crowd gasps. A shape forms. Just for a moment. A figure, tall, robed, featureless, appears in the smoke. Or maybe you imagine it. Maybe you're sleep-deprived and overscented and standing too close to Koji. Either way, the emperor sees it too. He bows. The figure dissipates. The ritual ends. The city exhales. Back at the palace, celebrations erupt. Wine flows. Musicians return to the correct key. The cook prepares ghost cakes filled with hollow centers to honor the ungraspable. You receive a medal for participation in spiritual deterrence operations. It's shaped like a cloud with a single eye. It jingles when you move. Later that night, your shadow stretches longer than it should. And just before sleep takes you, you hear a voice whisper from behind the curtain. "Well, dance." You don't sleep after that. You try. You do the breathing exercises. You say the bedtime chant. You even cuddle up next to Koji the donkey, who now sleeps in your garden after refusing to re-enter the stables. Too much whispering, according to the stablemaster. But your shadow keeps twitching. And the next morning, the fog has returned, only this time, inside the capital. It's thin at first. A lazy mist curling through alleyways and palace courtyards. But it thickens by afternoon, swirling with purpose, slinking under doors and through keyholes like it knows its way around. The emperor, instead of panicking, is ecstatic. "They accept our invitation," he declares. "They come to negotiate." You're assigned to the night watch with 2 other guards, both of whom are now wearing blindfolds. "It helps," they say in unison. You don't ask why. You just nod and stand quietly as the fog coils around your boots like a sleepy cat made of static. At midnight, it happens. A sentry screams. You run to the west tower and find him collapsed, eyes wide, mouth open, whispering. "They spoke. They said my name backwards." He's not hurt, physically, but his voice keeps echoing before he speaks, like his soul's broadcasting on a delay. You report it. He's immediately promoted to Field Oracle, Tier 1, and given a tent full of mirrors. That same night, something strange moves through the camp outside the city walls. Armor. Empty. Just walking. You see it yourself, a full suit of plate mail, unoccupied, marching across the fog-covered field. One slow step at a time. No sound of breath. No footprints. Just a gentle clank, a sway, and a purpose. When the Emperor hears, he orders an official response. "Send envoys," he says. "You're one of them. Your team is outfitted with silver-trimmed scrolls, ceremonial fruit baskets, and a flute player trained in haunting adjacent melodies. You march toward the ghost-occupied glade like it's a diplomatic mission. Which, somehow, it is. The empty armor waits. You bow. The armor bows back. You place the fruit at its feet. It picks up an apple, raises it, and drops it into the fog. Gone. Then it turns. Marches away. Mission successful? Historians still argue whether the armor was an elaborate puppet, an imperial trick, or a genuine autonomous specter from a plane of sorrowful nights and overly dramatic choreography. You return to camp with no casualties, no answers, and a newfound fear of apples. That evening, you overhear a priest whispering to a window. He's asking the glass for permission to reflect. You make a mental note not to touch mirrors for a while. Later, you inspect your armor and find 3 new scratches on the breastplate. Perfectly parallel. You didn't make them. No one else touched your gear. You sleep in your boots. Just in case. You're sent to investigate a village. Specifically, that village, the one from the messenger reports. The one where the locals all started speaking in unison and blinking, stopped. It's called Moriwake, and it used to be a sleepy hamlet known for plum wine and suspiciously aggressive chickens. Now, it's been declared a zone of paranormal concern. You're accompanied by a team of monks, a scribe named Ito who constantly smells like fish oil, and 2 soldiers from the elite Whisper Guard, men trained to fight auditory anomalies. You arrive just after dawn. The fog parts for you. Literally. As if it's been waiting. The village is silent. Doors hang open. Fires still smolder in hearths. Meals are half-eaten, as if someone called a meeting mid-dinner and no one came back. And then you see them. Standing in the square. A dozen villagers. Stiff. Expressionless. Perfectly spaced apart. All facing the same direction. You call out. They all turn their heads at the same time. No blink. No breath. And then they speak, together, in a voice that sounds like gravel dragging across crystal. Balance must be restored. You flinch. Ito drops his pen. One of the Whisper Guards bolts into an alley and vomits. The villagers don't move. You try speaking to them individually. Nothing. Not a twitch. But when you read aloud from your field scroll, they all hum, low, dissonant, just on the edge of melody. You step closer. One woman's eyes are glassy, but there's a flicker of something. Recognition? Plea? Memory? You reach for her hand. She opens her mouth. A second voice, deep, detached, echoing, issues from her throat. The breach was opened. The wound was not closed. You step back. The monks start chanting. The villagers flinch, as if in pain. Then, without warning, they all sit down simultaneously and resume eating their long cold meals as if nothing happened. You're not ready for this. The Emperor is. He reads your report with grim satisfaction. Possession by symbiotic consciousness, he declares. They are becoming part of us. He orders Moriwake sealed off. Not evacuated, sealed. Ringed with salt trenches and patrolled by clerics on spectral rotation. That night, a new decree. All border settlements must conduct daily reflection ceremonies to monitor spiritual congruence. Translated, stare into a bowl of water at sunset and see if anything winks back. Historians still argue whether the villagers of Moriwake were truly possessed, victims of mass trauma, or part of an elaborate performance art rebellion that got way out of hand. You argue that something is changing. And fast. Soon after, more reports flood in. Villagers across the eastern provinces hear voices from empty wells. A schoolteacher's shadow refuses to follow her. A fisherman hooks a fish that whispers his daughter's name. He hasn't had a daughter in years. The Emperor orders more rituals, more salt, more bells. You ask him what happens if the fog reaches the throne room. He smiles and says, "Then I will listen." Back in the capital, things unravel, quietly, politely, like a tea ceremony conducted in an earthquake. The temples are full, not with worshippers, but with watchers. People come not to pray but to observe, waiting for signs, a flickering flame, a rustling scroll, a single bead of sweat on a statue's brow. And then it happens. In the grand shrine of endless harmony, a statue begins to bleed. Not dramatically, just a thin red trickle from the eye of the goddess of serenity. A monk faints. Another drops his censer. Within minutes, word spreads through the capital like wildfire wrapped in scandal. The Emperor, ever the opportunist, or prophet, depending on your angle, declares it an omen. The veil is thinning. The spirits are demanding justice. A new edict follows within the hour. All public statues are to be spiritually reviewed, and any that display signs of metaphysical distress must be blindfolded immediately and gently reassured. You're assigned to the reassurance detail. Your task? Whisper comforting phrases to a marble sculpture of a 300-year-old general while tying a cloth over its eyes. You're halfway through a pep talk when the statue shivers. Just a little. Enough to make your fingers tingle. You don't finish your sentence. You just tie the knot tighter. The next morning, the fountains run red. Not blood, beet juice. Someone dumped barrels of it into the palace aqueducts in what was either a prank, a protest, or an accidental over-delivery by a very confused beet farmer. Historians still argue about it. The emperor takes it as a sign of divine humor. They test us with riddles, he says. We must answer with resolve. A new department is created, the Office of Interpretive Liquids. Its job is to taste, categorize, and spiritually assess any unexplained fluid manifestations. You sit in on a tasting. The lead liquidologist sips a crimson sample, swishes it thoughtfully, and declares, definitely spectral, hints of remorse, slight undertone of irony. He is promoted on the spot. That evening, the sky darkens prematurely. A total solar eclipse that was not predicted by court astrologers throws the city into shadow. People scream. Birds fly backward. Somewhere, a bell rings without being touched. The emperor ascends the high balcony. Cloaked in a robe of woven stars, he raises his arms and shouts into the darkness, "You may take my sleep, but not my sovereignty." A bolt of lightning answers, not near, but inside the palace gardens. A tree explodes into flame. The rain that follows smells faintly of vinegar and cloves. You begin to suspect you're not in a war anymore. You're in a performance. A ritual. A story being told by forces older than language, and you're a very small footnote trying not to be erased. That night, the emperor hosts a midnight vigil. He sits cross-legged in a ring of candles, eyes closed, murmuring to the sky. You watch from a distance, clutching your cloak tighter. A court poet beside you whispers, "Historians will never believe this." You reply, "That's probably the point." You dream of him before you see him. A cloaked figure, tall and motionless, standing in the center of your thoughts like a monument no one remembers building. His face is a blank oval of shadow, but his presence is unmistakable, calm, powerful, impossibly old. He raises one hand, not to strike, to beckon. And then you wake, heart hammering, mouth dry, a whisper still echoing in your skull, "Return the silence." You're not the only one. At breakfast, nearly every officer you speak to had the same dream. Same figure. Same gesture. Same phrase. The emperor is already waiting in the strategy chamber. He looks more energized than ever, eyes glowing with conviction, lips curled into the kind of smile people usually reserve for either wedding vows or battlefield revelations. He places a scroll on the table. It's blank. The ghost general has made contact, he says. We meet him in dreams. He leads them. He offers us terms. You lean in. So do the others. What terms? The emperor narrows his eyes. Balance. Of course. Always balance. The next few nights, more dreams come. Clearer. More structured. You're standing on a battlefield of ash and glass. In the distance, silent soldiers, thin, faceless, robed in silver fog, stand in rows. Their general is closer now. His voice arrives in your head like thunder underwater. You broke the seal. You forgot the pact. Now restore it, or vanish with your stories. Historians still argue whether this shared dream phenomenon was the result of a psychological contagion, some form of mass hypnosis, or, just possibly, actual inter-realm communication. The emperor doesn't question it. He sends formal acknowledgement scrolls into the mist, tied to doves, each one bearing the imperial seal and a hand-drawn symbol of apology, a cracked mask, mended with gold. Some of the doves return. Not all. One comes back with no message, just a single ghostly feather where the scroll used to be. The emperor interprets this as a good sign. They listen. Then comes the night of the storm. Wind howls through the palace like a choir of wolves. Lightning forks in slow motion, illuminating the towers in white-blue pulses. And at the very center of the storm, visible only from the topmost watchtower, you see him. The ghost general. Standing perfectly still atop the empty northern hill. His cloak flutters in reverse. His sword floats beside him. Not held. Just there. You blink. He's gone. The emperor calls an emergency council meeting. He outlines a bold new plan, direct negotiation. We meet him, he declares, on neutral ground. No weapons. No symbols of power. Just truth. You're assigned to the envoy team again. Same robes. Same incense. This time, no fruit baskets. Just a mirror. A gift. The negotiation takes place in a ruined amphitheater outside the city. You arrive at midnight. The fog parts. And there he is. Waiting. The ghost general doesn't speak aloud. He simply raises a hand. You place the mirror on a stone. He looks into it. His reflection doesn't match. Not quite. It shows him, but behind him, thousands of faces. Watching. Waiting. You hear a single word in your head, almost. Then he vanishes. The Emperor considers this a declaration of something. Not war. Not peace. Perhaps respect. You can't stop thinking about those faces. How many of them looked familiar? And how one looked like you? You return to camp under a blood-orange sky. The sun hangs lower than it should, dragging the light down with it like a sinking coin. The soldiers sense it too. No more jokes. No more ghost stories over stew. The silence becomes the camp's native language. Men begin to desert. At first, it's subtle. A few gone at morning roll call, a couple more missing from patrol. Then whole units vanish overnight. Their gear remains neatly packed. Boots lined up. Bedrolls still warm. Not a trace of struggle. It's like they walked willingly into the fog, or were gently invited. The Emperor, in all his stubborn magnificence, refuses to admit collapse. They've been chosen, he says, lips tight with pride. Elevated to the other front. You try to counter. You talk logistics, numbers, gaps in formation. He waves a hand, dismissing your concerns like mosquitoes at a feast. This war is no longer about territory, he says. It is about presence. Then come the reports of madness. A soldier from the eastern flank staggers back into camp, clothes torn, eyes vacant. He keeps repeating, "It was me, it was me, it was me," even as he chews on his own sleeve. When asked who he's talking about, he points at your shadow. Not you, your shadow. The medic files it under temporal identity collapse. Another soldier writes an entire strategy report in a language no one recognizes. When asked to translate, he vomits sand and faints. You'd call it hysteria. You want to call it hysteria. But then it spreads to the generals. One orders his men to surround the silence and press inward. Another starts issuing commands from inside a chalk circle he won't step out of. General Muto, your old campaign partner, the sane one, hands you his sword with shaking hands. She doesn't want me to hold it anymore, he says. When you ask who she is, he whispers, the one who sings behind the fog. He disappears the next day. Just a pile of clothes left in his tent and a single, half-sun note hanging in the air like morning frost. Historians still debate whether this collapse was inevitable, a breakdown of morale under impossible conditions, or if the Empire had finally opened a door that refused to be shut. The Emperor remains, unmoving, undeterred. He's begun sleeping during the day and waking only at sunset. They speak at night, he tells his aides. That is when the veil is soft. You find him one evening carving symbols into the stones of his chamber floor. The same sigil over and over, the cracked circle pierced by a feather. You recognize it from the old journal. The one the last Ghost War Emperor tried to burn. You ask what it means. He looks up with tears in his eyes. It's a promise we broke. The next morning, the fog is thicker than ever. You can't see past your outstretched hand. A trumpet sounds, but no one's sure where it came from, or who blew it, or whether it came from this world at all. The soldiers who remain huddle together, whispering apologies to people who aren't there. One begs you to forgive him for something he won't explain. You forgive him anyway. And you don't ask what's following you when you feel breathless in your own tent, despite no one being inside but you. The Emperor summons what remains of the army to the Hill of Echoes, a place no one is quite sure actually exists, except the fog insists it does. You trudge through thick mist, feeling the ground shift beneath your feet like the world itself is hesitant to hold you. Around you, soldiers move in silence, shadows in a nightmare, their faces pale and eyes hollow. The air tastes metallic and old, like forgotten promises. As you approach the summit, the Emperor stands waiting, clad in robes woven with silver thread that catches the pale light like frozen moonbeams. He lifts his sword, not in attack, but as a beacon. Today, he declares, voice steady despite the shaking earth, we end this war. The plan is simple yet surreal, a full assault on a hill no enemy has ever held. No battle cries, No marching drums, just the army charging into the thickest fog, weapons raised against nothing and everything. The first line advances, swallowed almost instantly by the mist. Shouts echo and vanish. Weapons swing through air that resists and bites. Some soldiers stumble, others collapse, faces twisted in confusion or fear. You press forward, heart pounding, senses stretched thin. Suddenly, the fog parts slightly and you glimpse a figure, a soldier, translucent, wounded, reaching out. You want to help, but your hands pass through him. The Emperor shouts orders, but his voice seems to echo from far away, as if he too is trapped between worlds. The battle rages with no clear enemy, no clear cause, just a relentless assault on an invisible force. By day's end, many lie broken, some alive, some lost to madness, some vanished altogether. The Emperor descends the hill alone, silent and exhausted, his armor dulled but his spirit unyielding. He declares the campaign a necessary sacrifice for balance and vows to rebuild from the ashes of doubt. Historians still argue whether the assault was a tactical blunder, a ritualistic cleansing, or a tragic surrender to an unseen foe. You wonder if the hill itself swallowed more than soldiers that day, maybe even hope. That night, the camp is eerily quiet. The fog clings like a shroud, heavier and colder. You lie awake, listening to the distant sound of marching footsteps, slow, steady, and unyielding, echoing across the empty plain. You close your eyes, but the steps follow you into sleep. The days following the Hill of Echoes assault pass in a haze of exhaustion and eerie silence. The soldiers who survive shuffle through camp like ghosts themselves, faces hollow, eyes glazed with a quiet terror they dare not speak aloud. Supplies dwindle, morale plummets, and whispers of defeat grow louder. The Emperor, ever the pillar of stoic determination, refuses to acknowledge the unraveling. Instead, he pours himself into rituals, scrolls, and meetings with his spiritual council. The battlefield becomes a place of memory and myth rather than conflict. Reports of skirmishes fade into silence. Commanders quietly retreat to their estates, feigning illness or duty elsewhere. The once grand army dissolves like mist at dawn, leaving only fragments of banners and shattered hope. You find yourself wandering the empty campsites, tracing your fingers over the faded insignia of fallen comrades, wondering if any of it was real or merely a collective dream. The Emperor's proclamations grow increasingly cryptic, speaking of closing the breach and sealing the veils. Courtiers murmur about madness, but no one dares voice doubt openly. A lone monk approaches you one evening, his eyes sunken but clear. The Empire is not lost, he whispers, only transformed. His words hang in the cold air like smoke. Then, as if on cue, the fog lifts for the first time in weeks. The sun breaks. Through clouds heavy with promise and grief, you look to the horizon and see the distant silhouette of returning villagers, faces lined with sorrow but alive. The Emperor emerges from his chamber, weary but unbowed, and announces a new era. One where the living and the unseen coexist in fragile harmony. Historians still debate whether the Ghost War ended in defeat or a strange, uneasy peace. But you know this, history isn't just written by victors. Sometimes, it's whispered by those who dared to face the shadows, and live to tell the tale. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of all you've witnessed, and for the first time, allow yourself to hope. History tried to erase what happened next. Official records vanish, chronicles are burned, and all mention of the Ghost War is scrubbed from public memory like a bad stain. You watch as statues erected in honor of the Emperor's bravery are quietly dismantled at night, bricks carted away under cover of darkness. The capital's great library, once a beacon of knowledge, is locked tight, its most sensitive volumes hidden away or destroyed. Yet whispers linger, fragments of stories told in hushed tones at taverns and market stalls, passed from parent to child like forbidden secrets. Some say the Ghost Army never truly disappeared, they simply slipped beneath the veil of time, waiting for the moment when mortal arrogance would summon them again. Others claim the Emperor himself was consumed by the fog, becoming part of the very spectral force he sought to defeat. Your own journal is among the few surviving accounts, hidden in a secret compartment carved into a table leg. You wonder if anyone will ever read it, if anyone will believe the strange dance between reality and nightmare you lived through. But perhaps that's the point. History is not just what happened, but what we choose to remember. And sometimes, the most important stories are those whispered in shadows, too dangerous for daylight. As you close this chapter of your life, you carry the weight of unseen battles and unspoken sacrifices. You know the fog is always waiting, patient and silent. But so are you. Ready to face the next story, whenever it comes. Time drifts by like a slow river, carrying with it memories both sharp and blurred. The empire rebuilds, new leaders rise, cities grow, and the world forgets the war that never truly was. You walk through the quiet halls of a palace that no longer echoes with battle cries, but with soft footsteps and whispered prayers. Sometimes, late at night, you hear faint tapping at your window, like a distant drumbeat calling you back to the fog. You never answer. Instead, you sit by the fire, pen in hand, recording what can be remembered and what must be forgotten. The ghost general, the silent army, the emperor's stubborn fight, they all live now in stories told beneath the stars. Some say the veil thins still, and that the ghosts watch and wait, guarding their secrets. Others believe the war ended not with swords, but with understanding, an uneasy truce written in silence and shadow. You close your eyes and breathe in the calm. The night is deep and soft, the air cool against your skin. Whatever comes next, you feel ready. History is never done writing itself, and neither are you. Now, as the fire flickers low, and the world settles into quiet, it's time to rest. Sleep well. Dream deeply. And remember, some wars are fought not with armies, but with courage to face the unknown. Sweet dreams.